I want to talk about today, this is something, I don't know if you've noticed. I've noticed this since really the beginning of the year. Through Todd's messages, some of the prophetic words, there seems like there's been a theme in what we've done here. And I don't know if you caught it, but it's all been about going, speaking into the world, being the light in the world. You know, the prophecies we've given, it seems like there's been that theme that's going through this, at least since January, I've seen it. And these are all absolutely right on. I don't think we would disagree with that in any way, shape, or form. But as I look back, and Todd was right, April, May, I started having this sense of something else that the Lord wanted to speak in this time. And what it was is I think there's something else, or there's something that comes before the going. There's something that comes before the going, and that's what I want to talk about today. And what that is, this thing I think that comes before the going is we need to have a vision. We need to have a vision before we go. And I want to explore that this morning. And so to start, you think about it, anytime something began in the Bible, there was a vision. Or something was spoken into existence. Anytime something began. So here's a few examples. The first one, Genesis, obviously, tells us, in the beginning, the Spirit hovered over the waters. And then what followed? Creation. The Spirit was the beginning of everything. So Genesis. Another one, Noah was given a vision or was told to build an ark. That was the beginning of something. And what happened? The flood. There was a kind of a new beginning, or something that came out of the old. Something began. And then Abraham, he was told that his ancestors would be as numerous as the stars. And Abraham doubted at first, but then what came out of that? Israel. The nation of Israel came out of that. Something began. And then now David was told that he would be the father, or in his lineage would come the Messiah that would save the world. And however many years later, you can do the math, we've got Jesus, right? It was the beginning. He was spoken. And where do these words come from? Where do these visions, where do these revelations come from? Well, they came from God, right? It's the only place they could have come from, because God's got it all figured out. And another example, Revelation gives us a vision of the end times, and ... We don't know what we know, but we don't know, right? Revelation tells us it's going to be the beginning of something new. Something's going to happen in that time. So I want to explore even more about this concept of vision, but the questions we need to ask ourselves first is, what really is a vision? I think we all have some ideas, some concepts of what we think a vision or visions are, and we all desire them, I think. We all want, give me a vision, Lord, give me a vision. I need a vision. And we kind of also substitute the word vision for, we should substitute revelation. We substitute goals, those kinds of things for vision. Give me a goal, Father. Tell me what I need to do. So number one, we need to really ask ourselves, what is the vision? And number two, what do I do when I get it? What do I do with this thing? I mean, I've been walking in the prophetic for quite a few years, and I give a prophetic word, and people are like, what do I do with it now? It's one thing to receive that, but what do I do then? So those are two questions that I hope that I can answer for you today as we go forward. But I also firmly believe that God, all visions are given by His Spirit. And anything does not come from His Spirit, we shouldn't be following it. We shouldn't be grabbing onto it and holding onto it. So kind of a funny thing, if you think about back in 2015, maybe that time period, a lot of companies and businesses, and I know even Total Christian where I work, they had developed this 2020 vision plan. They were trying to figure out what we're going to do what's the 5-year plan, folks? We always got a 5-year plan. Kind of comical if they only knew then what we know now, huh? About what was going on in 2020. Maybe their plan might have been a little bit different. We probably would have ordered a lot more masks and, sanitizer and put that in the game plan. That being aside, I do believe that in the last 5 or so years, give or take a few years, a lot of people have lost their vision. And they're floundering in a sea of voices. We're floundering. We don't know where to turn, who to go to, what to trust. We're just kind of, you guys from The Princess Bride, Andre the Giant, he tells him to hop in the water, and Andre the Giant goes, I only doggy paddle. Maybe we're only doggy paddling, we're not getting anywhere. Because we've lost our sense of vision, revelation. And I really believe the world, and this kind of ties into our stream of what we've been feeling or sensing in the last 6 months, 9 months, is that the world has definitely lost their vision. I think we as believers are struggling. Let's be honest. God wouldn't be telling us to go since January if we weren't struggling, okay? He's keep hammering at home with it. Come on, go, 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 go. Got to get out there. So we're struggling, but the world, it's totally gone. It's just gone. So like Todd said, God gave me this message back in May because I really believe that vision needs to be restored to the church. That's where vision has to start. We have to know beyond a shadow of a doubt what we're doing. If we don't, then why would the world follow us? Why? You don't know what you're doing. You're just as messed up as I am. That's what it is. So I really believe that, again, since May, early June, that God wants to restore us, bring back vision to the visionless. But we have to first walk in vision, or we'll walk around with no direction. So let's first start with scripture verse, one of my favorites. Proverbs 29:18. And, you didn't put them on the same screen. Both versions. It's okay. Okay, we'll flip back and forth. All right. So in the NIV, 29:18 says, where there is no revelation, the people cast off restraint. Does that seem familiar to what we're seeing today? Seems pretty familiar. But the blessed is he who keeps the law. And I'm going to break this up into 2 parts. I'll talk about the first part of the passage first, then we'll come back to the second part. Because the second part is, to me, really more interesting. But then the King James, I like the King James much better. This is actually how I learned it. Where there is no vision, people perish. That's exactly what we're talking about here, right? But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. Right? So without vision, without revelation, people perish. How many people do you know that are perishing, who are floundering, who are doggy paddle, going nowhere without direction? So let's think about that. So what is the vision? The vision we talked about, it comes from the Spirit. I think there's 2 different types. The first type I'm going to suggest is it's something we see in the natural, in the Spirit, or in our mind. That would be a vision. And you can think of in the Bible your own examples. I'll go through a few here in a minute. But there are lots and lots of examples of people who had a vision not only in the natural, or you even talked about last week when the Elisha looked over and saw the soldiers, he saw that in the natural. Or in the Spirit, John tells us he was caught up in the Spirit. Right? Or in our mind. Sometimes we just see things in our mind's eye. These I would consider be called visions with an S. It's kind of funny how one letter can change your concept of what a word means. It's kind of interesting. Some of you are English teachers. The other type is a plan or decree for the future. Plan or decree for the future. And again, I'm going to go a couple examples here, and there's lots and lots of them in the Bible. This is what I would consider a vision, which could be synonymous with a goal or a plan, okay? So those are the two types that, as I've done some studying, I kind of recognize that that's what these things are. And here's a good one for you, Todd, for an axiom if you want to put up there. I think visions bring about vision. Visions bring about vision. So think about that one for a minute. So let's go through a few examples. We've first got Joseph. Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, those of you who are musical fans. And this one isn't the one you think it is. I mean, obviously we know about Joseph. He got all these dreams and saved the kingdom of Egypt. But let's go back even a little bit further before anything really happened to him. Let's look at Genesis 37, 6 through 7, and 9. And it says, I'll start with verse 5. Jesus had a dream. Sounds interesting. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out of the field when suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. We all know he got him into a lot of trouble saying that. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. It set in motion something in his life, did it not? It set in motion something began for Joseph. He had a vision, or vision. He had visions. See, I'm going to get confused a little bit. So he had visions of what God had in store for him in the future. God's given you, I'll come back to this as well, God has given each and every one of you visions for what he has in store for your life. But I'm telling you right now, the world, sometimes you listen to the world's voices and they cloud what you're seeing and hearing from the Lord. They're clouding you. They're clouding what you can see. Let's go to Peter. Pretty famous one. This is in Acts. Acts 10:10. Sorry, I keep bumping my head down. And it says, about noon, I'll start with verse 9, even though it's in 10. The following day, and they were on a journey approaching the city. Peter went up on the roof to pray. Come back to that in a second. He became hungry and wanted something to eat. And while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. And I'm going to continue. He saw heaven opened up and something like a large sheet being let down by four corners, and all the four-footed animals, as well as reptiles of earth and birds in air. And then a voice told him, get up, Peter, kill and eat. What was this the beginning of? Well, this was the beginning of the Jews getting their heinies out of Jerusalem and going into fulfilling what God has called them to do, go into all the world, right? This was really the beginning, the genesis of that. And God spoke to him. He fell into a trance called, he saw things in the natural, but he was still awake. He was on a rooftop. There's something about that too. I think we all know this. Sometimes visions comes when we're alone and in the Lord's presence. God drew him. Why would he? He was hungry. What's he going up on the rooftop for? You going to get the seagulls? I don't know. Maybe there was, I don't know what was up on the rooftop. I don't think there was any food up there. Maybe they had rooftop gardens. Maybe he was going to get some vegetables. I don't know. For me, I would go to the kitchen. I'm hungry. Let's go get some food. But he went to the rooftop to pray and fell into a trance. Interesting. Very interesting. So another good example. Let's talk about John. John's very clear in Revelation chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. And John says, the revelation of Jesus Christ. Can't get any clearer than that. Which God gave him to show his servants what soon must take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testifies to him everything he saw, that is the Word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. Wow, can't any more clear than that. What is Revelation, the book of Revelation, about? It's the beginning, it's the genesis of God restoring the world to his original purposes. It's the beginning of revelation, restoration. It's the beginning. So another good example of what we're talking about this morning. And then finally, I got one more example. What is God's vision for us? Let's think about this one. Everybody's familiar with this one. You can probably say it with me. Jeremiah 29:11. Everybody knows this one. And it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." That is the vision that we need to hold on to as we go forth into the world. That is it. If we are so clear and so focused on that, as we go into the world's going to go, I'm following that. I'm all over that. Plans to prosper you and give you a future and a hope and a future. The world's got to be all over that because they don't have a hope. They don't know that anybody's going to prosper them. They've lost their hope in the government. Government's not going to prosper them. They can't even prosper themselves in many ways because they're spiraling down into this pit of despair. Oh, sorry, another Princess Bride reference. So let's just take a moment and think about what would happen if these visions have never been given. What if Joseph never got his vision about him being, his brothers bowing down to him? Or what if he never really took stock in it and said, nah, that's just bad dates? You know, what if he said that? I mean, hypothetically speaking, you know, God would probably chose somebody else, but God chose Joseph for this purpose. It was his job. That's what he's going to do. But would Egypt have been saved? Let's just play it out. Joseph said, nope, not going to follow that path. Got my own path to follow. Would Egypt have been saved? Would his family have been saved? And his brothers? No. Egypt would not be what history books tell us it is today. What a completely different course. What if Peter said, okay, Lord, I see you got this. You want me to go and eat any kind of animal I want, but I'm not going to go to the Gentiles. Nope, can't do it. Not going there. Not going to happen. Would we be sitting here today? Hypothetically speaking, of course. Because God had a plan, and he was going to use somebody to make that plan happen. But in the end, if Peter said no, if we don't have the book of Revelation, Jeremiah 29:11 is meaningless to us. Because Revelation really gives us, it's the confirmation of that hope and future, right? Revelation is that confirmation that, yes, this is true. We are going to be able to live in heaven one day in peace and prosperity. And we have a future. We're not going to end up as sand in our gravestone, or in our tomb. And obviously, Jeremiah 29:11, if God didn't have this for us, I'd be depressed. I don't know about you. I'd be walking around going, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my life? I've been there once in a while, but yeah, so what if these things didn't come to pass? And there's some other examples of, we all have, we have visions for what we want for our family, or a vision for what we want for our family. Our children, hopes and futures for our children, hopes and futures for our marriages. What if we didn't have that vision, that hope, that future? If I just gave up on my children? Oh, that would be horrible to think about, to live in that kind of world. So I really believe, and even I'm sorry, I'm going to include Christianity in part of this. I believe in this time we are seeking and in some ways creating our own visions / revelation, and they are causing us to perish. I really do. I really believe that. And I'm just as guilty of it too. I don't stand up here and say I'm excluded from this by any means. There are days when I wake up and go, oh, can't do it today, can't do it. Especially Friday when felt like it was 1,000 degrees outside and 200% humidity. And I'm like, Lord, I can't do this today. Can't do it. But I have a hope in the future. If I don't have that, I don't have a hope in the future. But there are so many voices in the world that we just can't listen to them anymore. We can't do this, folks. We cannot listen to the world anymore. And it seeps in and we don't even know it. I mean, I have a newsfeed app on my phone. It's called Flipboard. And, I just and I just read the headlines, and every once in a while I'll grab one and read it. But that's the world. It's seeping into me, and I'm starting to hear what the world is saying. Yeah. It clouds my vision of what God has for me. People have become, as in Romans tells us, people have become their own gods, small g, and doing what is right in their own eyes. Israel, time and time again, if you read through 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Samuel, I don't know how many times it probably says it there, and they did what was right in their own eyes. And they did what was right in their own eyes. Because they were following what? All the other non-Jewish countries. They were following them. They were letting that seep in. Even from the day they stepped in, I've been reading through Samuel, and even from the first day they stepped into the promised land, they couldn't get it right. And we do too, okay? As soon as I put that first step out of bed in the morning, I get it wrong. Let's be honest. I get it wrong too. So where does vision come from? I think we're pretty clear on what that is. First, it's not from the world. We don't get vision from the world. Okay? Sorry, Todd. We don't get vision from our pastors. Sorry. We don't get vision from our friends. Sorry. Family. Sorry. Spouses. Sorry. Vision doesn't come from them. We don't get vision from the academia or the learned scholars of the world. We don't get vision from Google, Siri, Alexa, or the internet. Sorry, I tell Alexa very often, Alexa, you're dumb. And then she goes, if you have a problem with our services, please call 1-800, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, you're dumb. And by all means, you don't get vision from me. Just because I'm up here doesn't mean that I have anything special. You may grab nuggets. And let's be honest, we'll get nuggets from these people, from our family, from our pastors. Not Alexa. We'll get nuggets that may confirm revelation or vision that we may have that God has for us, but it's not the complete. It's not complete. What do all these represent? They represent knowledge. And since the Industrial Revolution, I teach this to my kids in psychology, sociology, we as a world, as a globe, have been about knowledge. The scientific method, the good way of going about doing things, and we have to have facts to support things. Sorry, sometimes vision is not supported in fact. Ask Peter. I saw this vision, and God told me to eat all the animals and go to the Jews. Well, where's your facts to back that up? Well, I don't have a VCR recording of that, and I don't have any taped recordings of that. Well, then it can't be real. Sorry, it was. How many of you have had visions or revelations and things like that from the Lord that there's just no basis in fact for it? I have. I know I have. The Lord's told me to do things. I went, okay, let's see how this works out. But it does. Because it comes from the Lord, who's got a greater vision than we ever will. Okay? So these are all knowledge. But I want to talk to you about where should we go, and I think we're pretty familiar with what this should be. First and foremost, the Bible. That's where we should be going. 2 Timothy. Everybody knows this one. 2 Timothy 3:16. And it says, all Scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. Wow. So the first place we should go is the Bible. What does that mean? And I tell this to my students at school. I'm like, you guys got to have a quiet time. You got to be in the Word, folks. If you're not, then you're not even at the beginning of where you need to be. Because you're not even making a choice in the morning to follow Him. You may have some head knowledge about Him, but you're not making a spiritual choice to follow Him on a daily basis. It's not happening. We've got to be in the Word. And this is just as much for me as anybody else. Now, even this year, usually in the summer times, I usually get up first thing in the morning, and I spend 30 minutes in the Word praying. And usually, since I started teaching, the summer times, I'm like, oh, it's summer. I don't want to do that. I'm just not going to get up. I'll do it later. All these. But this was the first summer since I've been teaching that the Lord really got on me and said, you got to do this. You got to do this. And even now that school has started, I used to get up, brush my teeth, go downstairs, have breakfast, make my lunch, then go back up and pray for a half an hour. I don't do that anymore. I wake up, turn the alarm off, go to the bathroom. And then I spend 30 minutes before I do anything else. Because I have to get my mind right about what's going on in the day. I have to. People, and I understand people are different. The Lord's going to put on your heart what He wants you to do. I know people who, it's the last 30 minutes of the day or the end of the day. I'm like, okay, well, that's what the Lord's telling you to do, then go for it. But I firmly believe, going back to the concept of first fruits, and I still can't get my head around second first fruits. Still can't get my head around that. For me, it's got to be first thing. Because it's the first part of my day. I've challenged my students, and maybe someday I'll get to this point, what if we tithe 10% of our time to the Lord? We're awake. Let's see, I'm awake from 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock. What is that, 14 hours? What if I gave 1.4 hours of my day to the Lord? That's a big chunk of time. That's all. I don't even know if I can stay awake for 1.4 hours of the day in the morning or at night. That's a big chunk of time. So that's the first place we can go for script, for understanding, for vision. The other one is the Spirit. And Jesus made it pretty clear in John 14, chapter 14, verses 25 and 26. And He says, all this I have spoken while still with you, but the Counselor, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and remind you of everything I have said to you. Jesus went because the Spirit had to come. And I started this whole message saying that where does revelation vision come from? It comes from the Spirit. Because the Spirit is in us, the Spirit's around us. It's not the Force, mind you. I've been watching Star Wars from chronological order. It's not the Force, but it's in us. And we need to have that relationship with the Spirit. And what does that look like for you? I know I've been to some Pentecostal churches and been around the block a few times with prophetic conferences and things, and there's some weird things out there. I'll give you that about what it means to be born in the Spirit. What does that mean for you? I don't think it means you have to speak in tongues. That's what I believe. But what does it mean for you to have a relationship not only with Jesus, but His Spirit who He sent to help us, to remind us of all the things He said, and to lead us into all things? What does it mean for you to have a relationship with the Spirit, in the Spirit? And what do these represent? We talked about how the first group there, they represent all the things, they represent knowledge. I believe anything from the Spirit represents wisdom. We need to walk in wisdom on a daily basis. And then where we set our hearts. Where do we set our hearts? First, if we look at the world, our vision becomes worldly. We talked about that already. And our vision becomes finite. It becomes limited in the focus. And what is the end? Well, it closes doors and death. Think about what the world's going through right now. Their vision is limited, and there's death going on in the world. Let's go back to a Bible example. Think about Pharaoh and the plagues. Pharaoh's vision was limited to the fact that he just wanted his kingdom to succeed on earth. That was his limited vision. And the only way he saw that happening was keeping the Hebrews working for him, building his kingdom. And what happened? Death. Death. And we can see this happen time and time again. But what if we keep our eyes focused on Jesus? Our vision becomes spiritual and becomes eternal. We no longer have this finite death concept that's going on. We know that now we're going to live forever in heaven, right? We have this eternal idea of what's going on. You know, every year there's seniors that graduate TCS. Something about that. I got to stop that from happening. But you know, and they all get sad and, oh, I'm not going to see you guys anymore. And, you know, but I say to them, I said, listen, you know what? We've had 4 years together. And for you, that seems finite. But think about it. Someday, we're going to be worshiping in heaven together, and we're going to have eternity together. And that somehow brings them some peace and comfort. Isn't that vision? Isn't that revelation? Because now they have this eternal vision of what life is about instead of this finite thing. Oh, this is a closing chapter. This is done. Those are closing. No. Don't worry. We're going to be together one day. And it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to have all my past students. We'll be just hanging out, just talking and having a good time. I can't wait. It's awesome. That gives me hope for the future, right? That's what it's all about. So here's something for you, Todd. What does the Bible do for us? Something Todd talked about, was it last week? I think it was last week. Talked about thresholds. The Bible helps us cross that threshold from the world into the spiritual. I think those are right from your words, so I give you credit for that. The Bible helps us get out of this worldly concept that we're stuck in of death and closed doors and finite visions and walks us into this vision of eternity, to the eternal, to life and hope for a future. The Bible is that threshold that we can walk across. All right, so I told you at the beginning I was going to talk about vision and people perishing, but I want to go to that second part of, if you can bring that back up, Donna, Proverbs, if you can bring that back up real quick. The second part of this is tied to all of this, and this is where I really want to go this morning. It says, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. And I've been kind of stuck on that and going, what does this mean? Why is that there? It doesn't, to me, it's almost like two separate sentences to me. I'm like, okay, so happy. Because the law, to me, is given by man, right? I mean, we got to pay taxes. That's a law. We got to stop at the stop sign. We got to pay. That's a law. I got to go to work in order to get a paycheck. That's kind of the rules of the game. That's how you play the game, right? The only way you get paid is you got to work. There's these rules that we have, societal rules. I teach sociology at TCS. And we have these rules of how society is supposed to work. We got to wear a mask these days. We got to stay 6 feet apart. We can elbow bump, These are kind of society rules. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Rules come from man. That's not from the Spirit. Why is this here about vision and revelation but if I follow the law, happy is he. And I got stuck in that. I'm like, what? So, Lord gave me a couple verses. Exodus 31:18. And this may at first you might not quite understand it, but we'll go through it. And it says, When the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets of testimony, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. I went, finger of God. Finger of God. Could that be the Spirit? Spirit? Did the Spirit give the law? If the Spirit gives revelation, then the law is good too? Is the law revelation? Is the law vision? So, I went again. Let's look at another verse. Exodus 34, 28 and 29. It says kind of the same thing. The first time, Moses comes down from the mountain and they're worshiping the calf. Oh boy, my Israelites, what are you doing? Breaks the rock, or breaks the stone tablets, right? So he goes back up in the mountain after the earthquake and everything and all that stuff. And so we find again in Exodus 34, 28 and 29. It says, Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. So now we have another set of 10 Commandments that was given to Moses, who comes down from the mountain with this glow, and they have to put a sheet over him or some veil over him. So he was in the presence of the Lord receiving the 10 Commandments. Again, this is from the Spirit. So I understand, we live in a world where there's lots of man's laws, and there's lots of what we would probably consider unjust laws that are just the foolishness of man. But God has put people in authority over us, and we have been commanded to follow the governing authorities over us, right? So there must be some sort of spiritual connection there. As long as I follow the law, which is given by the Spirit, and the Spirit gives revelation, there must be something about that I should make sure I follow the law, and then I will be happy. And I actually tell this to my kids all the time. We get talking about dress code, and why do I got to do this? And I'm like, you know what? Just do it. You could have a choice. You could sit here and be miserable about it all day long and complain and whine and then have a horrible high school experience. Or you can just say, you know what? I'm just going to follow the rules and be happy. It's that simple. Just be happy. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right, Mr. Pinkelman. That makes a lot of sense. I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's why I'm the teacher, I guess. I don't know. So the law was given by the Spirit, and I believe any vision that we are given will line up with the law. It has to. God hasn't called us to be lawbreakers. God hasn't called us to be civil disobedience and rot in jail. I mean, that's kind of ruins his plans for us, I think, if we're locked in a cell. So any law or any vision that we are given will line up with the law. So here's where I'm going to go. And I don't know who chose the opening video today. You're going to like this. You cannot say anymore that you've never been given a vision for what you're supposed to do in life. Because what is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, and all your mind. And the second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the vision for our lives. That's what it is. It doesn't get any simpler than that. It's that simple. And so as we go, we've talked since January, it seems like, as we go and love. That's it. So you can no longer say that God's never given you a vision, because he's given you one, to go and love. And build relationships with people. There was a time, I haven't been down there in quite a few years, that I was doing shows, well, my shoes come untied, down at the Repertoire Theater, and know a lot of non-believers. And I'm just there building relationships with them. I'm loving them. I'm showing them that I'm just as normal, not necessarily normal, there's something different about me, but maybe I'm just as weird, I don't know. But I'm just building relationships with them. There's a man who owns a costume shop in Waterville, and he would consider himself to be homosexual. I'm building a relationship with him. That's what God's called us to do. Go and love. That's the vision we have. So I hope that now that we've kind of gone through this, that you understand what vision is, and you can go and, I understand we all want that great revelation. We all want that Peter moment. We all want those dreams and visions, and yeah, I do too. But what greater vision can there be than to love? There can't be anything but greater. So I leave you with that this morning, that as we go and and I'm assuming God's going to continue to hammer this home in the messages and prophecies that come forth in church. They're going to continue, even this morning, Donna, you were talking about going again. We need to hear it. We need to be reminded daily that we need to go and love and build relationships with people. That is our greatest vision that anybody could ever have. So let me pray.